Okay, hello and welcome back to the Land Rover Toolbox videos. In this episode we're going to have a brief look at some of the tools that we've been using in the series so far and some of the tools that you're going to get to see later on. Basically, I've spent the last 25 years using hand tools, buying them, using them, abusing them and losing them. And for working, only the best actually will do. However, for DIY purposes, now you have a greater option available for you for doing your vehicle that are actually quite good quality. So we've got a load of tools that we've been given to test out, and I'm going to give you the rundown on some of them, as well as show you some of my professional tools that I've got. Get to know this tray quite well, and it has a 1/2 inch, quarter and 3/8 drive rails on it for your sockets. As you can see here, this one's from Laser Tools. It's a lot cheaper, about £16. These are adaptable to how you want to fit your sockets. However, with the 3/4 drive sockets, they don't fit because there's nothing to accommodate them. You have to buy the clips for the rails yourself. Right, so let's talk about torque wrenches. We have a laser torque wrench here, and this is an older torque wrench that I've been using for quite a while at home and at work, which is calibrated. It has been passed every year for the last 5 years by a calibration expert. However, this one, which is a cheaper one, has failed a calibration, and it's do not use in a professional environment, so that went in the skip, whereas this one is still in use. The laser one we have here is a slightly different design. It's been tested and it is okay, so we are all right to use it. You might not need to calibrate your equipment because it only needs to be done in a professional garage. However, these laser tools are not bad at all. This one's a micrometer type adjustment to set your torque, which we'll have to do in a tutorial at some point. Beautiful action. And this is very necessary to have a torque wrench. Generally, you'll be looking at having a torque wrench from 20 Newton meters to about 300 Newton meters, which means you'll have a 3/8 drive one for lighter torques and a 1/2 inch drive one for heavier or stronger torques. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up here. Now, this is a leak back tester, which is considered a professional test tool, and we're going to be using this pretty shortly. Thing is, it's made by Laser Tools, and they are very comparable to the lower end of the Snap-on range, which are Blue Point. Now here we also have something that the Freelander owners might enjoy, which is a spring compressor for a Mcpherson Strut. This is the type of kit that Laser also excel in. We'll be using this later on for the Freelander owners to show you how to change the springs on your Mcpherson Strut. Right, so this is a taper breaker or a ball joint splitter, and generally what we're looking to do is put force on the lever so it breaks the taper and knocks the ball joint out of its seat, like so. So easy. There are other ways of doing it, but this is a tool that's handy to use, which you'll find in my toolbox. This is made by Blue Point. Okay, I've just mentioned them. They're a lower range of the Snap-on family, or the tools. You can see that it says Blue Point. Just turn it over. Now, I'm going to let you into a little bit of a secret here, which might end up me having a contract on my life, but most of these tools are made in China, Korea and Taiwan. Okay, so you can find these tools cheaper under different names depending if you know what you're looking for. Blue Point also make electronic diagnostic equipment as well. We have an EOBD tester. Now it's compliant with EOBD2. It works very well. We also have a Snap-on multimeter hidden away there. I'm not going to show it at the moment. And this is a Blue Point multimeter. They are both made in Korea. Now remember that because most of the tools these days are not made in the UK, the EU or the United States. Okay, this is a Brahma of a tool. This is the Piston Pusher or spreader, which pushes back your brake caliper pistons like so. If you use a bar or a screwdriver or a lever of some sort, you're not pushing the pistons back evenly, and there is a chance of causing a problem. However, these paddles, which fit over the piston faces, and once they're pushed out, it pushes it evenly back into the body. Now the tool can either be used with a little handle or has an accommodation for a ratchet. Brilliant tool that should be in your toolbox. It's definitely in mine now, and it's staying there. Okay, screwdrivers, soft handled, and they feel very, very comfortable to use. These ones are color coded. You have blue for slot headed and yellow for posi drive. These ones are a must if you are going to be doing anything with your dashboard and your Land Rover, and you get an idea of what sizes the screws are by what's written on the handle. No big deal. However, the only downside to this is the plastic casing, which is utter pants. It's not going to last long and will crack shortly. Not that it's a big issue, because the screwdrivers are pretty good. Okay, so the dial gauge that we've been using in our tutorials, which you'll see more of, comes in a box like this, and it costs about £40. This is necessary for precision. The more you use a dial gauge, the better you get at doing precision work. More tighter tolerances means less slack, means much better efficiency. The maker of these tools is Linear, and you can see the kit number up there. You won't want to spend much more money on a dial gauge in a workshop for fear of it being broken. Okay, so the bearing race driver, we've had a couple of questions from people who are curious to know where we've got this from. The bearing driver is actually a Blue Point one, and it looks like this. This is the kit that it comes in, and the one we were using was 76mm, which is the red one. They are available on eBay by Nielsen and other tool suppliers. Okay, so a laser spanner set that we've been using was actually pretty good for taking off prop shaft bolts, whereas a silver line spanner here would not exactly fit on the nut because it was too fat. And there you go, there's the laser tool one, which is fit snugly. Now I like these tools, they're thin, and you can see here using the double spanner trick, they are strong enough to cope as well. The thing is, with a lot of spanner sets, you only get the standard spanners with them, and with the laser kit is no exception. But you can see here they are quite strong and worth the money, and they're not very expensive. Always get yourself 2 sets of spanners. Well, I mean, this is for obvious reasons, for the nut and the bolts. The ring part of the combination spanner is good enough to do these specialist bolts as well. Okay, so 1/2 inch drive ratchet. This is from Deltec. The difference here, the handle is actually plastic completely, or composite. There's no metal in it. Only the ratchet part and the head is actually metal. If you look closely, it is actually starting to be chewed up, but it's doing its work, which is what it's designed to do. The seal puller here, this is a general purpose seal puller. You know what the shape looks like, so you can go and Google it on eBay and recognize it by its shape. Okay, what we have also in the box is a light pry bar. These are pretty handy for use where a screwdriver shouldn't be used. It also has a decent plastic handle on it. Generally you want to be using it for levering out large components like so. Okay, so a gasket scraper here. This is a stout one from Snap-on. It has a knife edge on it. Just a heads up, if you put a knife edge ground onto your pry bar, you could use it the same way as you do a gasket scraper. Okay, so we'll get to the toolbox, and we're going to open up the top and have a look inside first of all. This is a reconditioned Mac box, and it's the best that we could possibly get for the money. Right, so what we have on the top layer is sockets, wrenches and more sockets. You can never do without too many sockets, and we have deep and shallow sockets, semi-deep sockets. Like this one here is a semi-deep bi-hexagonal socket. Okay, with your Land Rover, basically for doing brake calipers, you want a socket like this, which is bi-hexagonal, which is 13mm. Okay, this is for removing the calipers. You can't use any other socket other than a bi-hexagonal for undoing these nuts on the calipers. However, there is a set here which is all drives by laser, and they do the same job. They fit exactly onto the socket head, and you can crack it off with a breaker bar first of all, then using a ratchet to wind it off afterwards. As you can see here is a positive grip and it will pull off the bolt easily. Okay, so there we go, cracked off, no slipping. Inside the socket is basically a set of splines, and this will do both metric and the AF equivalent. And 13mm will be 12.75 or ½ inch. The bolts that retain the disc, okay, this is 14mm, same thing again, and they fit snugly with no problem. On normal bolts, again, if they slip with a lot of tension on them, you know they're no good, and this is alright. It's not exactly a loose fit at all. You can see how much strain I've put on those drive flange bolts, and they've come undone quite well. Okay, the other abuse of a socket is to use air tools on it, or in this case an electric tool, and crack them off. Chrome vanadium or shiny sockets should not be used with an impact tool. However, these didn't crack, so they're pretty good quality. The bonus here is that they make obsolete quite a few different socket sizes, so using them on things like this diff, which is actually imperial, and I'm using a 14mm socket, cracked off no problem. Added bonus is if you have a nut that is neither metric or imperial because it's rotten, these seem to do the job, grip and undo them. We've all been there, we all know this. The sizes go from 8mm to 32mm and imperial respectively. Okay, so we have a breaker bar here as well, which is a laser tool, provided also by Bearmark. This is a handy tool that you need for doing jobs like cracking off tight nuts and bolts, decent handle grip, and it also can be used like this to hold the hub in place. Laying next to it is a 3/4 inch drive breaker bar, which is unnecessary for a Land Rover, as you'll find a ½ inch drive breaker bar is acceptable. For undoing and doing up nuts and bolts on your prop shaft, you need a specialist 9/16 tool available from Bearmark. Failing that, you'll need a set of spanners. Okay, the prop shaft tool, which is 9/16, it has a very slim head on it, so it will fit between the yokes, so you can undo nuts or nuts and bolts depending on which prop shaft you're working on. These will undo very difficult bolts. However, you'll find that you might need to put the wheel on the ground so you don't turn the prop shaft while you're trying to undo the nut. It has a positive grip action, not because it has any specialist type of teeth in it, it's because it will fit over the head properly and squarely, like so. Usually you need an open-ended spanner to be able to do these closed nuts off. The battery wrench that we've been using is by Snap-on. This is ½ inch drive and will actually deliver a fair bit of torque at 18 volts. This is for professional use, and there's a 3/8 drive one here as well, which is his little baby brother. They run on the same batteries. What you're looking here is almost £1,000 worth of equipment, and the batteries are possibly the most expensive part of this kit. I wouldn't advise buying these unless you're going to use them all the time, all day long, and they will actually run the course. They are worth the money. Anything cheaper is not worth it. These are, instead of having to buy a compressor and air guns and lines and everything else, you have a battery gun, which is an impact wrench to do up nuts and bolts. On the Bearmark website, you'll find a catalogue that you can click on and look, which is all about tools, and the laser tools that you've seen in this video are featured there, which you can order from your Bearmark distributors. There are a few extra wonderful little bits, especially this one here, which is the old 2.25 distributor backlash tool you can see here. Check Bearmark out, they're not as expensive as you might think they are. If you're interested in Snap-on, you can either find a Snap-on van or buy stuff direct from their website.